Chapter 1: The Zero-Sum Game. The smell of stale instant noodles and the hum of a cheap cooling fan. That was the first thing I felt. I opened my eyes, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I wasn't in the Abyss dungeon. I wasn't feeling the icy prickle of my brother's sacrifice spell. That forbidden skill that forced a party member to absorb 100% of the caster's damage. He had used it to save his own level 90 berserker gear, while I, his only healer, dissolved into pixels. In the real world, my heart had stopped from the neural shock, but here I was, breathing. I was in my bedroom. I was 21 years old again. Clack! The door swung open without a knock. My brother Sam stood there with a greedy grin. In my last life, I thought that grin meant he was excited to play with me. Now I saw it for what it was, the look of a predator checking his livestock. "Kate, finally awake," he said, his voice grating. "Listen, the guild needs that Heaven's Light staff you dropped yesterday. I already promised it to the vice leader of the Iron Bloods. He's going to give me a carry through the rank A trial in return. Give it here." In my last life, I would have smiled and handed it over. I spent 3 years being his mana battery, a high-level healer who existed only to funnel resources into his mediocre career. I was the reason he was famous, yet I lived on instant noodles while he wore designer clothes bought with my gold. I looked at him now, feeling only a cold, clean void, the human bliss of realizing I owed him absolutely nothing. "No," I said. My voice was sandpaper dry, but steady. Sam blinked, his grin faltering. "What? Don't be selfish. Mom and Dad said you have to support me so I can turn pro. It's for the family's future." The family's future? I stood up. My legs felt weak, but my mind was sharper than a whetted blade. "You mean the future where Dad takes out high-interest business loans in my name to fund your gambling habits? Or the one where Mom borrows my tournament winnings to pay for your luxury car?" Sam froze. His face went pale. He didn't know I had discovered the loan papers in the attic. In my last life, it was too late to fix. "Kate, you! Get out, Sam. If you enter this room again, I'm calling the bank to report identity theft. I already have the digital copies of the signatures." I didn't give him a second chance. I pushed him out, locked the door, and shoved my dresser against it. I had exactly 2 hours before the Ethelgard 2.0 patch dropped. This patch was the turning point in history, the moment the stat transfer became permanent. In my last life, I was a level 80 Saint of Mercy with high spirit but 0 physical defense. This time, I was going to be the hunter. I logged into the Neuralink. System. User identified. Kate. Level 80. Class. Saint of Mercy. Status. Active. With a flick of my wrist, I opened the black market exchange. In Ethelgard, legendary items were worth more than gold. They were life insurance. I listed everything. My staff, my silk robes, my rare Angel's Tear ring. Market, all items sold. Credits received, 50,000. Balance updated. 50,000 credits. Enough to rent a high-security apartment in the city and never look back. Now, for the final strike. I navigated to the character management screen. I stared at the Saint of Mercy icon, the symbol of my servitude. Warning, character deletion is permanent. All titles will be lost. Confirm deletion of Saint Kate? "Goodbye, sacrifice," I whispered. I pressed confirm. The world dissolved into white pixels, but instead of the usual logout screen, a mechanical chime echoed in my ears. A glitch I had only heard rumors of in my past life. The Protocol 0 trigger. System critical override. Rewriting genetic code based on Soul Reborn parameters. New class, Void Phantom. Rank, Origin. Passive, Real-World Transfer, 10%. I pulled the headset off. My body felt electric. I could hear my parents screaming at Sam in the hallway about missing funds. I grabbed my pre-packed bag and climbed out the window. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave a trace. I had a job interview at Apex Corp with Joanna in 3 hours. The shadow was finally free. Chapter 2. The Ice Queen's Assistant. Apex Corp was a monolith of glass and ego, towering over the financial district. It wasn't just a tech company. They owned the neural servers that ran Eithilgard. By the time I reached the 50th floor, the 10% agility transfer was settling into my bones. My footsteps were silent on the marble floor. When a distracted intern tripped in front of me, her tablet flying into the air, I didn't even think. I reached out, my hand moving like a blur, catching the device an inch from the ground before stepping back into my neutral stance. "Whoa, thanks," she gasped. I didn't answer. I just kept walking. My reflexes were no longer human. They were phantom. "Kate, CEO, Joanna will see you now." I walked into the office. The air was 5 degrees colder here. Joanna sat behind a desk of black obsidian. She was the ice queen of the tech world. Sharp features, eyes like frozen sapphires, and a tailored suit that projected absolute power. In the game, she was Valkyrie, the leader of the #1 guild, Apex. In my past life, she was a distant goddess, someone who decided the fate of thousands with a single command. "Your resume says you were a top-tier healer for Sam's Vanguard," Joanna said, her voice a smooth, dangerous silk. She didn't look up from her tablet. "Why does a strategist with a 98% raid success rate want to be a personal assistant?" "I'm looking for a change of pace, CEO," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. "And I prefer the stability of a corporate contract over the volatility of a small guild." Joanna finally looked up. A spark of interest flickered in her cold eyes. She searched my face for a tremor, a hint of nerves. She found nothing. "Most people lie to me, Kate. They tell me they want to learn from the best. You sound like you're just looking for a place to hide." "I'm looking for a place to grow," I corrected her, "and access to Apex's Tier 1 gaming pods would be a fair trade for my efficiency." Joanna leaned back, a small predatory smirk touching her lips. "You're blunt. I like that. Efficiency is the only currency I value." "Fine." Joanna snapped her fingers. "You're hired on a 3-month probation. You handle my schedule, my coffee, and my silence. If you leak a single detail about my in-game coordinates or Apex's server data, I will ensure you never work in this industry again." "Understood. CEO." I spent the rest of the day as her shadow. I watched her fire 3 department heads during a single lunch meeting. She was efficient, cruel, and brilliant. She treated people like variables in an equation. But at 6 p.m., the corporate mask fell. She locked her office door and climbed into her private, diamond-encrusted VR pod. "Kate, stay at the desk. Don't let anyone in. I have a world boss to kill, and I don't want to be disturbed by real life for the next 4 hours." I bowed my head. "Of course, CEO." As soon as the pod hissed shut, I sat at the secondary terminal. I put on my own headset. System: Welcome Ghost. Location: Void Realm. While Joanna, the great Valkyrie, was leading her army of thousands in a glorious, golden-lit raid, I was alone in the dark. I checked my status. My agility was climbing with every monster I slew in the shadows. Every time I dodged an attack in the game, my real-world muscles twitched with new memory. I looked at the global leaderboard. Valkyrie was #1. "Not for long, Joanna," I whispered. I vanished into the shadows of the game world, a phantom looking for her first true meal. Chapter 3. The First Encounter. The Abyssal King was a nightmare of rotting flesh and dark mana, its HP bar finally dipping into the red 5% zone. Joanna's guild, Apex, had been fighting it for 6 hours. The dungeon floor was littered with the corpses of players who hadn't respawned yet. Valkyrie stood at the center of the chaos, her golden armor cracked, but her sword still flashing with holy light. "Healers, rotate! Don't let the mana shield drop!" Joanna's voice boomed through the voice link, commanding and desperate. I sat on a stone rafter 100 feet above the boss, hidden by the Void Veil skill. I was only level 40, half the level of the elites below. But my Origin class stats were concentrated entirely into one thing: lethality. System, target weakness, detected. Threshold reached, soul reaping possible. Skill activated, void strike. As the Abyssal King roared, preparing a world-wiping explosion of shadows, I dropped. I wasn't a hero. I was a scavenger. I moved so fast that the players below didn't see a person. They saw a flicker of black static. I passed through Valkyrie's golden aura like a needle through silk. My dagger, a jagged shard of obsidian, pierced the boss's glowing core at the exact millisecond its invincibility frame dropped. World announcement. Player Ghost has secured the first kill of the Abyssal King. Loot distributed, Ghost. Global reputation, Ghost unknown. The boss exploded. I didn't stay to watch the death animation. I grabbed the heart of the abyss, the key to unlocking the next floor, and used Void Step to exit the dungeon before the dust even settled. Who was that? Joanna's scream of fury was so loud it almost clipped my audio. Find them. I want every bounty hunter in the server on their head. No one steals from Apex. I logged out immediately. I pulled the headset off. The office was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning. 3 seconds later, the CEO's pod hissed open. Joanna stepped out, her face flushed, her hair slightly disheveled from the neural heat. She slammed her hand onto the desk, her eyes wide with a mix of rage and shock. Kate, did you see the regional broadcast? I stood up slowly, my face a mask of professional calm. I adjusted her calendar, ensuring her morning appointments were perfectly aligned. The coffee is fresh, CEO. It's the Kenyan blend you prefer when you've had a stressful evening. Which news are you referring to? That ghost? Joanna paced the room, her high heels clicking like rapid gunfire on the marble. They stole my kill, right under my nose. I've never seen speed like that. It wasn't a skill, it was a movement glitch. It has to be. I walked over and handed her the cup. As our fingers brushed, I felt her pulse. It was racing. I moved just a fraction faster than a normal assistant would, a deliberate, subtle tease of the power I was hiding. Perhaps they were just more efficient than the Apex strategy allowed for, I said softly. Joanna stopped. She looked at the cup, then at my hand, and finally at my eyes. For a moment, the high-rise office felt as claustrophobic as the dungeon rafters. You're very calm, Kate. She narrowed her eyes, her sapphire gaze searching mine. Most people would be starstruck or terrified when I'm this angry. Why aren't you? It's just a game. CEO, I lied, the 10% agility transfer thrumming in my veins like a secret song. My job is to ensure your real-world schedule remains uninterrupted by digital setbacks. Shall we discuss the board meeting? Joanna took the coffee, her gaze lingering on me, longer than necessary. System, intuition, check successful. Target, Joanna, obsessed. The Ice Queen was beginning to melt, and she didn't even know that the person pouring her coffee was the phantom she had just sworn to destroy. Chapter 4, Face Slap and 10% Reality. The Apex corporate gala was a sea of champagne and sharkskin suits. Joanna looked breathtaking in a gown of midnight blue. It was the color of a winter sky, just before the stars come out. I stood 2 steps behind her, dressed in a sharp, minimalist suit. My void intuition was humming, highlighting every greedy heart in the room like glowing red pulses on a mini-map. Then the heavy oak doors burst open. There she is, the thief, the traitor! My mother and Sam pushed through the crowd. They looked pathetic. Sam's suit was wrinkled, smelling of sweat and cheap cologne, and my mother's eyes were bloodshot from a day of frantic calls to the bank. The elite guests whispered, their phones rising in a synchronized wave of recording. She abandoned us, my mother wailed, her voice cracking for maximum dramatic effect. She stole our family's future. CEO Joanna, your assistant is a criminal. She took my son's professional gear, the fruits of our labor, and ran away. Joanna's face turned into a mask of pure ice. She looked at the cameras, then at me, her gaze sharp enough to cut diamond. Kate, explain this. The reputation of Apex is at stake. I don't employ liabilities. For a second, the room held its breath. Joanna leaned in, her voice a freezing whisper that only I could hear. I'm going to fire you to save face, Kate. Don't make it harder than it already is. Just leave quietly. No, I said, stepping forward. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. My 10% stat transfer made my voice carry with a strange, resonant authority. I pulled out a tablet and tapped a few files. CEO, these individuals are indeed my family, but they aren't here for me. They're here because they've run out of people to exploit. I projected the screen onto the gala's main display. It wasn't a sob story. It was a cold, hard ledger. These are illegal gambling debts tied to your son's Vanguard Guild, Mother, I said, each word a hammer blow. Debts that were funneled through dummy corporations owned by rival firms of Apex, firms currently trying to short our stock. And as of 10 minutes ago, I bought those debts using the proceeds from my personal assets. Sam gasped, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. The crowd erupted in murmurs. This wasn't a family drama. It was a hostile takeover of a household. I am officially your landlord and your primary creditor, I continued, staring into my mother's eyes until she looked away. The house, the car, even that suit Sam is wearing, they belong to me. If you don't leave this building immediately, I will initiate foreclosure within the hour. Now, get out. The face slap was absolute. My mother slumped to the floor, her mask of righteous indignation shattered. Sam was frozen in shock, looking like a child who had just been told his toys were gone. But before security could drag them away, the massive glass ceiling shattered with a deafening roar. Crash! 4 men in matte black tactical gear dropped on high-speed wires, a corporate hit squad sent by the very rival firms I'd just exposed. They weren't there for my family. They were there to eliminate the Ice Queen. One of them pulled a high-velocity dart pistol, the laser sight dotting Joanna's pale neck. Time slowed to a crawl. This was the 10% reality transfer. My brain processed the air currents, the mechanical click of the trigger, and the trajectory before the dart even left the barrel. I didn't reach for a gun. I reached for a silver dessert spoon from a passing waiter's tray. Ping! With a flick of my wrist, the spoon intercepted the dart mid-air with a spark of metal on metal, pinning the projectile into the mahogany wall behind Joanna. My body moved with the exact ghost signature speed, a blur of black static that left after images in the eyes of the stunned socialites. In 3 seconds, the 4 men were on the ground. I didn't kill them. I simply moved faster than their nerves could fire. Their joints were dislocated by strikes too precise for the human eye to track. I adjusted my tie, smoothed my lapels, and turned to Joanna. She was staring at me, her chest heaving, her mouth slightly open. She looked at the dart, then at my steady hands, and then at the cold, calculating way I stood. That move, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of terror and awe. The parry frame from the Labyrinth Floor 50. Ghost, it's you. Chapter 5. Resolution and the New Contract. We were back in the penthouse office. The moon was a silver scythe in the sky, the only light source casting long, sharp shadows across the obsidian desk. Joanna wasn't sitting. She was standing by the window, her Ice Queen persona completely melted away, leaving only a woman who looked strangely small in the vastness of her own empire. You, she said, turning to face me. It wasn't an accusation, it was a realization that changed the gravity of the room. All this time, I was looking for a phantom in the machine, and she was the one handing me my coffee every morning. Efficiency, CEO, I said, my voice softer now, lacking the bite I'd used on my family. I knew the board was planning a move. I just didn't expect them to be so loud about it. My presence here wasn't just about a job, it was about positioning. My family is in the dust, I added, checking a final notification on my phone. Sam is banned from the servers for life due to the gambling violations I turned in. My mother is currently being escorted to a much smaller apartment. My independence is absolute. I owe no one, and no one owns me. Joanna walked closer, stepping into my personal space until I could feel the warmth radiating from her. She didn't look like a CEO anymore. She looked like a woman who had finally found a peer, someone who didn't look at her with greed or fear. I had a speech prepared about loyalty and corporate secrets, Joanna whispered, her sapphire eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my heart hammer for the first time since my rebirth. But I think we're past the point of employer and employee. She pulled a new document from her desk. It wasn't an assistance contract, it was a partnership agreement, drafted in a single, frantic hour. It detailed a 50-50 split of all Apex assets, in-game territories, and a seat on the board. I don't want an assistant, Kate, Joanna said, her hand resting over mine on the paper. Her skin was cool, but her grip was firm. I want a partner, in business, in the game, and... She trailed off, her voice dropping to a vulnerable register. I want someone who can see the real me, even when the lights are off. I looked at the contract, then at her. The woman who had been my goal, my rival, and now my savior. I picked up a pen and signed it with a flourish that felt like the final seal on my old life. I still haven't forgiven you for stealing that boss kill on floor 50, Joanna said, a genuine, playful smile breaking through her icy exterior. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I smiled back, a real, dangerous, and warm smile that reached my eyes. Then you'll have to keep up with me on floor 100, CEO. I don't plan on slowing down. Joanna leaned in, her forehead resting against mine, our breath mingling in the quiet office. Challenge accepted, Ghost. Let's show them what a real guild looks like. The shadow and the light were no longer at war. They were the new rulers of Ethelgard, and the world wasn't ready for what was coming next.
You made it to the end. Maybe you're already part of the story too. Don't disappear now. Like the video. And subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. I'll be waiting for you in the next story.